I'm going to be taking you through the Performance and Goals module from SAP SuccessFactors. The Performance and Goals module from SAP SuccessFactors contains a suite of tools to aid you in managing your employees' performance. Today, we're logged in as an employee, and the very first area of performance that we're going to take a look at is goal management. Now, within the goal management module, it is all around the employee establishing their goals for the performance year. These goals can be set a number of different ways, and we're going to take a look at a couple of those. Now, on this goal plan for the employee, down the left-hand side, we have their team. So anyone that is reporting to the employee is showing down the left-hand side. But in front and center on the screen, we have their goal plan for the year. Now, this goal plan can be structured by what we call categories, which allow you to support things like balanced scorecards. So you can see in this example, we've got financial, we've got internal business processes, and this employee already has 5 goals. We can see their status across the top and currently weighted at 85%. Now, in order to create a new goal, the employee has the ability to create the goal button. And from here, they've got a number of options to aid them through the process. So we're going to use the library today. Now, this will really help the employee establish their SMART goal. So ensuring that it's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Now, out of the box, we have a goal library, which is structured by functional area. So if the employee does need some additional guidance to understand goals that are commonly set in that area, they're able to go through and take a look at the library, and they could select one as the baseline of their goal. We also have a great search functionality whereby, instead of trawling the library, potentially we want to keyword search. So, might be looking for something in the area of management. And from there, it will start to suggest some common goals that I might want to consider. So I'll pick this one. We're then going to go through and refine that goal to make it relevant for me, so I can hit my edits and start to make some updates. So in this example, we'll make it time-bound, and we'll review the category. I might want to review the measure. I'll also add a weighting to ensure my goal plan meets 100%, and we'll then add that goal. Now, that's a very common way that employees would set goals. But as a manager, another way that we might want to be setting goals is that we want to cascade or align them down the organization. So the goals that I have as a manager may also be relevant to the team. And through the solution, we can cascade that goal, which will allow us to see visual alignment within the solution. So if, for example, one of my direct reports is going to miss their goal, then I know mine was also at risk. So what I can do is I'm able to select the goal we just created, and I can actually hit the cascade button. Now from there, I can then select from my team, so my direct reports, who I'm going to assign that down to. So we'll pick Kate and Chris, and from there, potentially I need to refine the goal further. The measure may differ for them. There may be a slightly more in-depth description we might want to add, but we can now cascade that down to those employees, and that will then be visible on their goal plan. So if we just very quickly look at Kate as her manager, I can now see that she has that goal on her goal plan. And then from there, Kate can take over and start to update throughout the year. So it might be that she wants to provide an update on the status of that goal. Now, throughout the year, manager and employee, they'll have regular conversations, one-on-one meetings. So that brings us to the next part of our performance and goals demonstration, which is looking at continuous performance management. Now, this is a tool that supplements a more formal annual performance review, whereby employee and manager have a workspace or a channel where they can keep updated with activities that the employee is working on. Now, some of those activities might be aligned to a goal, others may not. Now we can see it's laid out in a nice Kanban structure. And so within that, the employee has the ability to create activities that they are working through. So we might be doing a review of SLAs to improve help desk performance. And as I mentioned, that might be aligned to a goal. So here we have the ability to link it to one of the goals on the employee's goal plan. Now, we might have attachments that might be supporting that goal, and that will drop that into our Kanban board. Now, immediately that becomes available to the employee and the manager. And then as they progress their activities, they can drag and drop to move them throughout the Kanban board. Now, as a manager, you have access to all of your team. You have a channel with each of your team members. And the great thing about continuous performance is that it is not just isolated to the org structure. So you might be working on a project, working with someone outside of your team, and you want to use this tool to aid you in managing whatever deliverables you might have in that space. So you can actually invite them to then have a channel with you as well. So not just isolated to the use case of performance. Now, as the employee and manager are working through the activities that the employee might be working through, there'll be times that the employee marks things off as complete, so they tick them off their to-do list. Those will automatically move into the achievements area. And the great thing about that is it allows the solution to store all the great things that you worked on this year, and that can bring that into your performance review at the end of the year. The employee and the manager, when they have their one-on-one meetings, they might have those online, might have them face-to-face. But if we go to view meeting, it opens up a meeting space for the employee and manager to collaborate. So they might want to do a review of the current activities that the employee is working on. There might be things that the employee has flagged that they need assistance with, and the employee and manager can talk through those things. There may be additional discussion topics that one or the other has defined to talk about in that particular call or discussion. And as we tick those off, we can mark those complete and we can add further topics, might add more activities. And over to the right-hand side, we've got our space where we can add our notes and follow-up actions that we might want to take following the call. And then as we record the meeting, we've got our finish and add to meeting history, which will add it to the meeting history up here, which, as you can see, stores all the different conversations the employee and manager have had throughout the year. So really good traceability on the conversations that have occurred. We also have another tool that supports the performance process, which is the continuous feedback module. Now, this feedback module works a number of different ways. So it could be that the employee is requesting feedback about themselves throughout the year from anyone in the organization. They've got their request feedback button whereby they can select from anyone in the list. So I might choose to select from Keith. I can then add a bit of a topic around what I'm seeking feedback on. Got some standard questions that will display, of course, can be edited. And then as we send that off, that will go through as an email request and also through the employee SuccessFactors so that they can log in and provide that feedback. Now, it could also be that the manager is seeking feedback about their team. And then the third way is that it could be completely unsolicited. So you might be involved in a certain initiative with an employee and you think they've done an amazing job. You can go into the solutions, select from anyone in the organization and provide feedback to them. So we've got our give feedback button up here where you can give that to anyone. Now, as the feedback comes in, that will be visible to the employee and the manager, and that will display just like that, where we can see the feedback and who it was given by. And that's a great way to really promote ongoing real-time feedback as opposed to waiting to a formal review. Now, as we get to formal review process, now that could be a mid-year process in your organization, it could be a full year. We actually launch what we call a performance form. Now, a performance form contains multiple elements that we're looking to assess as part of performance. So it could be the goals that we were looking at before, it could be organizational values, it could be core competencies, it could be many different things. Now, in my example today, we're going to be looking at goals and organizational values. So what we can see here is our employee. This is the form that they have for end of year review. Now, first thing we can see is our what we call route map. Now, this will show us the process that the form is going to go through throughout that formal review period. So it's all starting with the employee for them to do a self-assessment. It will then go through to manager for the manager to do a review with Lisa. There'll then be a one-on-one discussion before that process is complete. In terms of the sections of the form, we can see those down the left-hand side, and if we jump to a specific area, the form will move. Now, we can see the first section in my example here is goals. Now, they are pulling directly from that goal plan that we were looking at earlier where we set a goal. So these are all of the employees' goals. And if we click into one of those, we can see all of the detail of the goal. So any of that measure and weightage that we saw in the goal plan, that will all display over there. Now, in this step, what we're asking the employee to do is rate in terms of a self-rating. So we can see here that we've got a star rating. Now, it could be all different scales, could be displayed in different ways, but here we can see that we're looking for the employee to self-rate, and we've got an area there to add any commentary or supporting information for the employee to add. So we're looking at the employee rating there against each of their goals. We'll just do a quick rating there. And then as we go down, the next section we're looking at is values. Now, in my example, I've got core organizational values. They are displaying for every employee in the organization. Now, these could differ depending on where the employee works or what role they're in, but in this example, they're the same for everyone. So as we click into the value, it gives us a high-level description. There might be some behavioral type information that shows there when we're rating our value, just like that. And then as the employee completes their form, they would then submit that through to their manager. We'll send that off into our manager. And then we'll quickly take a look at the manager view of that form. Now, logging in as the manager, we're able to pick up that form for the employee, and we'll take a look at what we can see from this perspective. So firstly, if we take a look at the route map again, what we're able to see is that step 1, the employee assessment, has now been completed, and we've moved on to step 2, which is the manager review. Now, the employee can't see what we're doing at this step. The employee has their submitted version. They're not able to see what the manager is now doing in the form. And the employee won't see the form again until we get to a step, normally a discussion step, where the outcome is discussed in a one-on-one with the employee, and then we allow the form to be visible to them. Now, as we go down into the goals section, what we're able to see on the right-hand side is we can see what the employee has self-rated, and we're now looking at providing a rating as the manager. Now, if we go over to the right-hand side, we're able again to see all the details around that goal. And if the employee's done their rating and commentary, we'll see that in there as well. And it's up to the manager to then go through and do their assessment of the employee. Let's do that. And then the same again for the organizational values. Now, main difference here is a couple of additional features that we're seeing. Now, firstly, at the very top of the screen, we've got a gap analysis. Now, what this is doing is when I update ratings as the manager, it's actually giving me a live view of the gap analysis. Now, highlighting where my rating as the manager is either higher or lower than the employee. So, if it's lower, potentially the employee's got some kind of blind spots where they might think they've done a little better or are doing a little better than I think. Or maybe they've rated lower, they're humble, they've got some hidden strengths. I want to be able to really give them that feedback in the performance review. So it's giving that focal point to the manager as to where they can hone in the conversation, which is really helpful. So you can see that gap showing against each goal and also high level at the top. Now, at the very end of the form, now that we've rated our goals and our values, we then have the ability to look at what we're considering overall for the employee. Now, based on mathematics and calculations, we can see that the employee has come in at a 3.25 for goals, 2.67 for values, which is an overall 2.96. However, I've got discretion here as to, whether I round up, round down. So we're going to finish this one off with a 3 for the employee, and that will be the manager step done. Now, from here, we're going to submit the form through for calibration. And we're going to pick up calibration as a HR representative. Now, the calibration tool is another additional option within the Performance and Goals module. It really allows us to bring in performance ratings for the purpose of roundtable discussion, moderation, calibration. Now, this can be built in as a step within the performance review process. So it might be that once the manager's rated, we then want HR to calibrate in sessions with leaders before we then move the forms out for discussion and final rating. So in this example, we're logged in as HR, HR will have established a calibration session. They might have leaders on screen share. They might have them in a room. And what it's done is it's brought in the manager rating for all of the team members that we've identified. In the first dashboard view, we can see our current distribution of ratings over a bell curve against, a typical distribution percentage based on that cohort size. So we can see high level, we've got quite a few people sitting in our solid bucket. Now, if we go to list view, that will show us all of the employees that are being included in this particular calibration. We can add some comments if there are actionable items that we want to note through the discussion. We've also got the ability to jump to more detail within the solution. So it might be that we want to go and have a look into the detail of the review. We might want to have a look at their profile. So we can access any of the information within SuccessFactors from here. And then in our performance view, we will have all of our employees distributed across the rating buckets. And from here, we can drag and drop employees as we're going through the conversation if we're going to be adjusting the overall rating. Calibrations can often get quite big, different teams, different locations. So we've also got a lot of really helpful filters at the top of the screen where you might want to hone in on a particular leader's team or a certain site or location. So you can use these filters to enhance what you see on the screen to dig in a little deeper. And then once we finalize that calibration session, that will then send through the updated rating to the form and progress that through to allow the manager to have that robust outcome discussion with the employee.